It's no secret that Fallout New Vegas is one of the best RPGs in gaming. How many games are discussed in such great detail as this one is? How many games have their stories analyzed in so many different ways as much as this game? How many games have so many layers that longtime players find something new on nearly every single playthrough a decade later? And how many games can you say accomplished all of these feats with nearly zero development time? Fallout New Vegas is one of my favorite games of all time. However, its developmental history is astounding because, for all intents and purposes, Fallout New Vegas should not exist. Let's start at the beginning. In 1997, Fallout, a post-nuclear role-playing game, was developed and published by Interplay Entertainment. The first Fallout received critical acclaim upon release despite being, as lead programmer and producer Tim Kaine would state, a B-tier project. According to Kaine, there were far more projects at Interplay that had more funding and larger teams, and the Fallout team was simply pushed off to the corner to do their own thing. This was a team of mostly new and inexperienced people working on a project that no one really cared about until it launched. Kaine would also say that Fallout wouldn't ship the way it was if it was a regularly made, planned, and processed game at Interplay. Meaning the Fallout we know and love today wouldn't be that way if the Fallout project didn't have the independence to be creatively free as it did. Because no one cared about it, no one put pressure on it to be anything other than what it was. After releasing to okay sales and extremely high reviews, Fallout 2 was then immediately put into production. However, there never was any plans for a sequel. It was always supposed to be a one-off game. But as sales increased and positive reviews kept coming in, Fallout 2 was inevitable. This time, instead of an independent team off working on a project no one cared about, everyone at Interplay wanted a piece of that sweet, sweet Fallout pie. Interplay would publish Fallout 2 in October of '98, just 1 year and 1 month after Fallout 1's release, followed by Fallout Tactics in 2001 and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel in 2004. Interplay would eventually task Black Isle Studio with developing Fallout 3, codenamed Van Buren. Sadly though, Interplay would close down Black Isle Studios in 2003 before they could actually finish the game, despite being fairly close to finishing it. Interplay would also license the Fallout IP to Bethesda Softworks in 2004, contracting them to develop 3 new Fallout games. Yet, in 2007, the Fallout IP would be acquired by Bethesda Softworks as Interplay sold the property to clear any remaining debts to avoid bankruptcy. After acquiring the rights to the IP, Bethesda changed the direction of the Fallout series from a standard turn-based isometric game to a first/third-person action role-playing game. Fallout 3 was released in 2008 to near universal acclaim, receiving multiple Game of the Year awards. As the praise continued to rise, Bethesda wanted to strike while the iron was hot and develop a new Fallout. Yet, their own developers were extremely busy working on a tiny indie project called Skyrim. I'm sure none of you have heard of that before. So Bethesda then decided the best way forward is to reach out and contract a new studio to develop a new Fallout. Founded in 2003, Obsidian Entertainment was created by ex-Black Isle Studio employees, some of whom actually worked on the first 2 Fallout games, as well as the cancelled Van Buren project. Working on such games as Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, Neverwinter Nights 2, and Alpha Protocol, the fairly new studio already had some hits under their belt. Bethesda began talking to Obsidian about developing a new Fallout in late 2008, and according to CEO Fergus Urquhart, Bethesda was still pitching it internally, so it was literally just an idea at the time. We knew from the start it was not going to be Fallout 4. That was the internal teams. It was meant to be not the sequel, it was meant to be an offshoot project. Internally, Obsidian considered their Fallout to be more akin to GTA Vice City or GTA San Andreas. Independent games in their own right, just offshoots from the standard numbered titles. In the initial pitching phase, Obsidian was given the parameters to do anything on the west coast of America. When deciding on a location, according to senior designer Chris Avalone, the team thought, what's a signature city that's comparable to Washington, D.C., but in the west? We asked people independently, and Vegas just kept coming up all the time. We were like, okay, that is a cool signature city. But at the same time, it turns out people in different departments got excited about it for different reasons. An example would be the artist got really excited about it because that's one city where you can play around with the architecture within almost every city block. When you walk down the strip in Vegas in real life, all those signature casinos, like the Luxor, have really cool themes. And the artists were like, oh, this would be fun to do. And we were like, okay, let's just take that energy and momentum and just make a fun location. Finally settling on Las Vegas as a location, they began pitching the story, and according to Urquhart, someone threw out the idea there was the scene in Goodfellas, where you get taken out into the desert and whacked and thrown into a grave, and it all kind of turned out that way. With a strong concept, Obsidian wrote a short 3-page proposal to Bethesda, pitching it as Fallout Sin City, which, over time, slowly evolved to Fallout New Vegas. When designing the world of New Vegas, the team looked to their cancelled Van Buren project for inspiration. Some of the elements that made its way into New Vegas was the Hoover Dam, Caesar's Legion, the NCR Brotherhood War, Joshua Graham, Arcade Gannon, and the Big MT, just to name a few. However, Avalon would state, if you read any of the Van Buren documents, you might recognize certain titles for groups. But what they actually became in New Vegas was far divorced from anything they were planned for in Van Buren. And speaking of Van Buren, like in Van Buren, New Vegas originally was supposed to have 3 playable races: human, ghoul, and super mutant. Yet that idea was cut due to issues with the engine. Regardless, New Vegas had an extremely strong concept, a great motivated team developing it, and had all the time in the world to make it perfect. Except, they didn't. As development began on Fallout New Vegas, the team instantly ran into multiple major problems. The first being, Obsidian developers weren't familiar with Bethesda's Gamebryo engine. They had to learn an entirely new development tool to build this game. Not only that, they also had to improve upon it so that players can now aim down sights, guns now have true bullet paths, meaning bullets come from the gun, not the crosshairs, graphical rendering improvements, new assets, and reworking the engine to accommodate for the extra lights and effects of the strip. The team then had to write 65,000 lines of branching dialogue, design 102 quests, create 373 unique NPCs, not counting DLCs, create a faction system, create a karma system, create a disguise system, and actually build the world. And the best part of it all, Obsidian only had 18 months to do it. The base game of Fallout New Vegas only had an 18-month-long development cycle, with an additional year after launch to produce the 4 DLCs. For reference, a typical AAA title takes on average 3 to 5 years to make. Sure, New Vegas wasn't building everything from scratch, but the task of taking the extremely popular game of Fallout 3 and not only fixing all its issues, but improving upon its mechanics and learning how to even work the engine in the first place, all in the span of a year and a half, is insane. With such a short development time, the team had to push out a functioning game, leaving multiple ideas left on the cutting room floor. For instance, post-game content similar to Fallout 3's Broken Steel was cut because, as project director Josh Sawyer would state, the area designers were falling behind on area milestones and would not be able to complete both of the core required content and post-game content in the remaining time. We did design post-game reactivity, we just didn't have time to implement it. Sawyer would continue to say, we would have gone further with that. We had to simplify, so we had less stuff that would bog down the game engine. I was happy with the DLC because, by that time, we knew what would work and what wouldn't. It was also focused, laser sharp, so we could spend more time on it. However, what I'd personally consider the biggest casualty to all of these cuts was additional Legion content. Originally east of the Colorado River, they were meant to be 3 Legion settlements filled with quests that would show a different side to the Legion. Sawyer would say, I think a lot of people have said, in addition to the Legion being just repulsive, they didn't have content to redeem them as a faction. Some people talk to Caesar and they're like, Caesar is interesting, crazy, but interesting, but the faction itself just seems like misogynistic psychos, and there's nothing really to change that perception. With these added settlements and quests, they would aim to paint the Legion in a more gray, ambiguous light. They would also cut Ulysses as a Legion sympathetic companion, a mission to either defend or take Novak from the Legion, a different opening, a whole playable sequence where you actually chase Benny out of the Tops Casino, and a whole host of smaller things that you can see here in this video by Alternative Gaming Channel, link in the description. Despite all of these hardships and a grueling 18-month release window, on October 19th, 2010, Fallout New Vegas was released. Due to the extremely limited 18-month development window, Fallout New Vegas released as a rather buggy final product, not nearly as bad as some games in today's day and age, which is just extremely depressing to say, but it was very buggy nonetheless. Despite these bugs, Fallout New Vegas received fairly positive reviews. mostly praising the story, the gameplay improvements, the role-playing improvements, and just being an improvement over Fallout 3. Yet despite these positive reviews, not everything was positive. In Obsidian's contract with Bethesda, they were offered a bonus that would be directly tied to the review score posted by Metacritic. For those of you who do not know, Metacritic is a website that combines multiple reviews for films, shows, music, and video games in order to create an overall average review score. In their contract, Bethesda stipulated if Fallout New Vegas received an average review score of 85, then Obsidian would be entitled to a bonus. Fallout New Vegas achieved a score of 84. For all their hard work on Fallout New Vegas, Obsidian Entertainment only received a straight payment, no bonuses. In the years to follow Fallout New Vegas' release, and after multiple patches, New Vegas grew in popularity. Initially, it was more of a cult following for this side game, but over time, that community eventually blossomed into a very passionate group of fans. Now, in 2023, Fallout New Vegas is remembered fondly, with many considering it to be the best Fallout game in the franchise, and one of the best RPGs out there. Den of Geeks ranked Fallout New Vegas as the 12th best game of the decade. Out of the top 100 RPGs of all time, IGN places Fallout New Vegas as the 28th, Games Radar places it as the 3rd, and if you just search Fallout New Vegas video essay on YouTube, you will find countless videos praising this phenomenal game. Looking back at the history of New Vegas, it's just astonishing. 18 months. They had 18 months. 18 months to fix a broken engine, write a new story, and create a new game. They had 18 months to do all of that, and they not only did that, but went above and beyond to create what I'd consider a masterpiece. In retrospect, their success makes sense though. Fallout New Vegas was, for all intents and purposes, a B-tier project, because Bethesda was working on a far more important project. Other teams had more funding, more time, and more manpower. Fallout New Vegas was kind of pushed off into the corner to do their own thing, with little oversight, and no one really cared about it until it launched. Fallout New Vegas wasn't made like a regular AAA title, and because no one cared about it, no one put pressure on it to be anything other than what it was. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? The reason Fallout New Vegas is so incredibly good is because at its core, at its literal developmental and spiritual core, Fallout New Vegas is inherently Fallout.